Welcome to the Secret Lives of Board Game Designers. We got Lacerda, Daryl Andrews, David Short, and Seth Jaffe.
Welcome.
So we are board game designers.
Yeah.
In case that was a mystery based on the title. Just like you guys, we also have lives. And what do you say? What's the life of a board game designer like?
Probably sit at the computer many times, working layouts and stuff like that, making rules.
Let's start with this. Is that the only thing you do full-time, or are you full-time board game?
Right now I'm full-time board game designer, yeah. Since the last 2 years I'm working on board game design. That has been cool. Well, maybe the work of my dream, so I worked so much 10 years to get this up, and fortunately it's possible for anyone that wants to be a game board designer. Nowadays it is possible. 10 years ago, maybe Martin Wallace or kind of easy.
Very few.
Yeah, very few.
And how many games have you got?
Oh, I don't have many games. I have 5 or 6 games probably. So that's okay. Since you find the right company, and if you design good games, probably it's possible for everyone. And you guys?
Yeah, I'm a full-time game designer / developer. And the way I've made that work out is I work with a lot of publishers for design, and then on the development side, I've been a contract worker for different companies as a developer, and then recently, 8 months ago, I actually started an imprint, a publishing studio called Maple Games, and so I curate and develop and run those games, and then I'm part of a alliance of other companies that deal with the logistics. So.
Yeah, and I remember not too long ago when you were trying to transition into full-time. How long has it been? How long have you been doing full-time game stuff?
So I have been doing full-time games for about 2.5, 3 years, but when I jumped in at the beginning, it was not a profitable way to live. So I lived from game to game, from advance to advance, and then had a very patient wife that was okay with me jumping into this and trying. And as over time, then it became more and more viable. So it was definitely. Before that, I called it a jobby. It was like, a little bit hobby, a little bit job. It wasn't paying the bills, but it was the kind of thing that I was having fun, and I could do it on the side while doing other jobs.
I'm not full-time, so I handle a full-time job in addition to game design. It is currently a hobby of mine, and juggle my time as such. So it's only when I have free time, or when I make the free time, or when I feel like doing it. So that's where I'm at right now.
So I'm kind of both full-time and not full-time in the industry. I still have an engineering job that I do 2 days a week, and then the rest of my time I spend doing game stuff. And like you guys said, it was kind of like a long time coming. I was, for 10 years or so, I was a hobbyist, and it kind of built from oh, this is kind of fun, I'll design games, to oh, now my friend started a publishing company and maybe I got one published, to now I work for the publishing company and we're looking for games to publish, and I've got more games out. And it sort of built over time. And over that time, my full-time job went to 4 days a week and 3 days a week, now it's 2 days a week. So I've been able to devote more time to it, which is nice. And I think that a good portion of the reason that you see more and more people devoting more time to it and finding jobs in the industry is because the amount that's grown in the last couple of years. Just there's a lot more people playing games and a lot more game companies. And as you can see, a lot more Kickstarter projects and a lot more games popping up on the shelves. So would you guys think that's, would you attribute your ability to go full-time and then the opportunities you've had to that, or something else?
I mean, I can start with that one. I would definitely say, board game growth is, for me, especially in the last few years, why I've been able to get my foot in the door. I've worked with a variety of different size publishers too. So you may, especially early on, connect with maybe smaller publisher because they're maybe more willing to take a chance on you. Unless you have a game that you've worked on for a while, it's a really great game and you can be confident. That's why I love that one. It is why I love it. It's for you. And it was just comical. Yeah, so early on, some of my first few games were signed with very small publishers, and yet they could use something like Kickstarter and still have a chance to get out there, and then from there, kind of leveraging that opportunity. So I would attribute the growth of our hobby as the only way right now that I can get to do this.
I still have some work in advertising, that is my background. I have a few clients, just to make sure that things don't go wrong. But the Kickstarter also helped with all of the new designers that are coming on the market, and by having these as their own life and their own job. It's not that easy because the competition is huge, right? Many people, but since the Kickstarter helps to provide the money to publish the game, it's much easier for the publishers to get in new designers right now. So it happens with me not immediately, because I started publishing for also a small publisher that was What's Your Game at the time, and I made videos at that time, and then I found a bigger one that was Stronghold. At that time I published Gamma a few years then, and another Italian company that is a little bit bigger now, but it was too small at that time, where I published CO2. And finally, the door started to open to me, and I could have invitations from many companies, and finally I decided to give some games to a company that does Kickstarter a lot. That company was very good for me, because not only allowed me to make the games how I want them to be, and there are not many companies that accept such heavy games that I usually like to do, and I do, but they also can improve a lot the production of the games because of the Kickstarter, because you guys back the games, of course. And that ends up by opening a career for the future. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
I know some questions you might have. So, what questions do you have? We got.
So do y'all find that you usually have the concept of something that, like an experience that you'd like to try to convey to the player, such as going surfing across the galaxy and then trying to put rules around that concept? Or do you often come up with a rule mechanic that you think would be interesting and say, well, how can I kind of pin up some sort of cool blanket around that?
The age-old question of mechanics first versus theme first.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will, depending on who you ask, like a lot of people think, oh yeah, I design things theme first. I want to picture an experience or a theme, and then pick mechanics that fit it. And then others will start with a mechanism. But I think even if you start with a mechanism, I think this is kind of my opinion, pretty quickly I need to find a theme to inform the rest of the design, or I just kind of like can't get anywhere. So even when I've started with a mechanism first, it turns into a theme first sort of thing. How do you guys approach that?
I agree. I've done both. Start with a mechanism, start with a theme. But like Seth, if it starts with a mechanism, I don't move forward past that concept before I'm really searching hard to find a theme that meshes well with the mechanism.
Yeah, I'd push it a little further too. There's like kind of a false dichotomy happening there. Because there's really, at the end of the day, you're just trying to find inspiration, and then you're gonna follow that inspiration wherever it goes. So for example, Jonathan Gilmore, he's one of the designers of Dead of Winter, and he likes to answer this question by saying that he actually designs by experience first. So not even the mechanism, not even the theme, but what kind of experience do you want the player to go through? There's a variety of ways that you can tackle it, where whatever you're trying to capture, whatever is gonna get you started, then continue to then chase after what's fun, what's working, and then kill your darlings with whatever is not working. So for me, something like an example like my most known game, Sagrada, like we had a very specific mechanic. It was the 5-color theorem, and we messed around with that a whole bunch, and then we put it on the shelf because we didn't know what the theme was. And then I was in Barcelona, I'm looking up at stained glass windows, and I saw dice. Like, it was just like, oh, got it, okay. Now, it doesn't always work that way. Like, it's gonna be a slog sometimes, it's gonna be chasing one idea and then finding out you went the wrong way and backing up and going another way. But I think there's whatever excuse, maybe it's a name, maybe it's a token that inspires, maybe it's anything.
It can be a walk,
Yeah.
it can be a ride on the park,
Yeah.
it can be under the shower
Yeah,
when you wake up. So it's,
Alan Moon's story is that he went for a walk and he used to always, I forget what the name is, but he always had like basically a train name for all of his projects. And then he would just be like, this is number 27, this is number 28. and then one day, whatever number it was, he came up with a ticket to ride. And he was just like walking, he got home and he made like 90% of ticket to ride. Just,
I can design by research because it's something, a team that interests me, not a team, but an issue or a problem that interests me, and I go research, and I may say after a few days of research, yeah, this can be the game. I've been lucky, none of my publishers changed the theme of my games ever, but there are many people that say that doesn't matter, you just go to the publisher thinks that the team is better for his market in that way, and the team is changed. So it all depends a lot of the games. I think my games will be hard to change the team because I create them with that base, but it's possible.
And the better job you do integrating the theme into your mechanics, the harder it is to change the theme. And I think Daryl's absolutely right with the inspiration. I don't think any one designer is always theme first or always this first or that first. But it's all about
It's a process, right?
Something inspires you and then you make it.
You go developing, you go during the creation stages, that takes usually 2-3 years, you are changing things, you are adapting, you are making the game better so the mechanics have to do with the team, everything must be connected. We kill our darlings many times, we had more stuff, we kill more stuff. Usually the first, the first playtesters, the first playtestings are completely different from the final game.
yeah.
So we start a game and you end up with another game completely different. It's not the same game. Maybe you keep a base, usually I can keep those, I created something that stays there all the game, but it's the core, how we call the core of the game, but everything else changes during the process. So.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing before we go about the core. Like, I heard Matt Leacock and Eric Lane were asked, what do you do when you get stuck? Do you wreck your core or what? And Matt Leacock's was that I cut away as much and keep the core and then come back to that. And that's his process. Eric Lane said, I cut the heart out, throw that away, and go with what. So they had literal opposite of ways, but it completely makes sense too, like, because they both have valid reasons to do that.
It's what makes them comfortable, right?
Yes.
The designing games, yeah. The goal is always the same, is to make a good game.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask on that. How much weight do you think having a theme kind of solidified into your design has when pitching to a publisher?
So I think it's going to depend on the publisher, probably. I mean, you can look and see that there are, the gift series or whatever that get published and they don't have any theme at all. And then there's other games like Blood Rage or whatever it is, like nothing but theme.
Too much theme.
So depending on what publisher, depending on what kind of game it is, depending on what kind of publisher you're publishing, I think that is a variable answer on that.
But I would say, I would add to that though, like, digging a little bit into a theme and making sure you have something strong and confident, but being flexible to change. Like, you want kind of to take both positions. You want to really paste in something strong that's interwoven in, so that when you're pitching it, I think at least then people can get engaged. And like, you want people to like kind of lose themselves in the game, but then obviously be open if they can come up with a better theme that makes the game better. Sure, there's going to be a lot of work, but sure, if it makes the game better. So I think you want to invest your time, not necessarily money, but invest your time in, really giving it some rich theme,
Yeah.
even when pitching.
I don't think you can go wrong integrating your mechanics. Like if you have whatever theme you pick, if your mechanics feel like you're doing that thing,
Yeah.
that's better than if they don't.
Yeah.
It can only help you, I think.
Rooted in that question though is making sure your game matches the publisher.
Oh, yeah.
Because that could be mistake one is you pitching your little kids game to a publisher that only does heavy games. So that's right there. So just a black mark on your pitch from the beginning. And so matching up who you think is the best fit for your game and seeking out those publishers and doing the research before you even put it in front of them is going to do you a lot of good.
So kind of related, in terms of like how much do you invest in the game concept before pitching it or really working on it? In terms of like making prototypes, how much production value do you put into your prototypes in order to pitch it, and including like things like art and theme and like component quality and stuff like that? You just go
first.
like paper cards and leave it at that?
At the very beginning, it's like as low tech and as fast as I can get it out of my head and onto the table. I'm not a graphic designer, so I don't even have those skill sets. So people are already prepared for something hideous and ugly. But as you're developing the game, you are going to be trying to address functionality, like your UX, the user experience really matters. So you're going to start developing, what icons don't get in the way so that people know what they're doing and you can get into the game as fast as possible. So your prototype is going to develop and grow, and don't show those stages to a publisher. By the time you've learned from that, then sure, clean it up, make it presentable, steal lots of images from the internet. You're not making any money from it. Don't spend money on art. Just find placeholder stuff, and then you're not invested financially. You've just put in your time to put something together that presents well and, more importantly, plays well. I think that's your number one question once you get to a publisher, is you're proving that you've put in the hours, that this game is tested, and then now they're trusting that, and then they're going to hopefully have a really good experience with it. Get them to play.
My answer for this has evolved into put as much art as you that fits the user experience and lets the game be played smoothly, but don't put so much that it hinders iterating the game. Right? And so that's the main trip that the obstacle people do is they go too far. I literally playtested a game first night of the convention, and I told this person that they needed more of this type of card, more abilities, it was special powers or something. And he goes, "Oh, we already paid the artist for that." So, okay, so you just screwed yourself. You put yourself in a hole, and now they can't dig out because they decided to pay artists too soon before they knew the actual quantities for the part. And so, you certainly make the game look presentable. It's going to get people to the table to playtest more of you. The first game with white cards and just scribbled on Sharpie, you have your dedicated playtesters that know what they're getting into, right? They trust you, they know why they're there. Other than that core group of playtesters, you need a game to be more functional, right? And so you do need some art, but do not go so far that you are like, wow, I don't want to change that. That's a pain in the rear. Then you're going too far.
Right. If you, and this is something, a danger that I've heard people talk about is if you are unwilling to change it because you put so much time, money, effort into the art, then that's too much because you're not going to be willing to make the changes you've invested too much. So that's why people usually suggest not doing that, just to have the bare bones prototypes. But I do agree with these guys. It used to be the case that you could have plain white cards or black ink or whatever, and that could be a prototype. I don't think that really does it anymore. It doesn't. It's not good enough for playtesting anymore because you've got so many people, so many games competing for your players' attention that it's hard to get someone to play your game if it doesn't look a little better. And as for publishers, it's the same kind of thing. We get pitched a bunch of games. Even if we say, oh, I know we're going to redo the art. It doesn't bother me if it doesn't look good. It makes a difference. It's easier to play. It's easier to look at. It's easier to learn if it looks good. So it's kind of unfortunate because I don't feel like it's an extra burden on the game designer that they have to do like more, art development or graphic design than they used to have to. But that's just kind of the market. It's just kind of went that way. but I agree, you don't want to be spending too much money or time making it functional. Even if, it doesn't have to be like professional level graphic design either, but making it functional is good. As an example, I have very little in the way of art skills as well. My card game, Eminence Main, had like 5 types of cards, and I didn't want them to all look black and white because it would hinder people playing the game. They'd have a handful of cards, which ones do they have? They all look the same. So I actually, in order to fix this problem, without even having any sort of like skills, I just printed them on different colored paper. So then the green cards were obviously different than the yellow cards, and while just having black and white ink. And I felt like that was a good example of maybe something to do. It doesn't have to be too pretty, but it's super functional and helps people play the game. Let's go here.
Okay. So a question for the gentlemen who are not full-time designers. How do you find the time to sit down and put in what I consider design very a heavy mind investment, thinking investment. It's hard on the brain, but you know, you're coming back home after a full-time job. Like, I feel drained, and I kind of find myself, it's hard to sit down and do that kind of work. I mean, do you set yourself up for like a schedule, or do you try to do all this stuff before you go into work for the day?
Well, it certainly depends on your job, but I have got game design on my mind all the time, 24/7. So, driving, showering,
Your boss knows
eating.
that?
What was that?
Your boss knows that?
He does know that. So that the time for thinking is not really something that I allocate, but certainly making the prototypes and the playtesting and the developing, all that certainly takes time. If you don't find that you're making the time, I'm not sure that you want it enough. Because you know, if you're passionate about it and it's something that's, you know, thorn in your side until you get it on the table, that's when you know that you have a nice cook that you really want to.
I think it's the passion that drives you. I'm only working full-time for 2 years ago, but the other 8 years I also have my full-time job. And I arrive home and just start designing games. If you want to be a game designer, you probably think about game design all day. Doesn't matter. I sleep with a notebook, and I wake up with some ideas and I write them down. So, and I did it during the last 10 years. I worked on advertising before, and I still do the same. So, but yeah, what drives is the passion that you have by designing a board game. I never planned to be a full-time designer. I just had my hobby. I love to play games, and I now play less games than played before. But it's just a passion, you know. I design on my games with some passion. I'm very enthusiastic about them. When I talk, when I teach the games, I really like to do it. And so, full-time or not, that's what drives me.
I was just gonna add, like, so also you don't have to be working. I would recommend working on potentially multiple games at the same time, and what thing you're passionate about, then work on that game. Because what I found too is that working on games, I can put something kind of on the back burner and it can simmer. When I come back to it, the problem I had may just completely be gone, fresh eyes, and all of a sudden.
That is very good. I always do that.
Yeah, it helps because then the pressure's off. You're just working on whatever project is flowing, and keep going with that. Like if ideas are popping or it's going smooth, like follow that fun. But then if you hit a wall, like don't sweat it.
Yeah, just place it apart, visit 1 year left, and you see if what you did is just certifies to keep going on the game or not. I always do that with my games. And when I say, people said, oh, it was 3 or 4 years to make a game, yeah, but 2 of the years they are on the shelf. So I don't work full time with them all the time. I worked them last year, yes, I did this intentionally, this playtesting almost every day until the game is ready. But the first years, I'm working in 2 or 3 projects at the same time, and I'm finishing now a game. So the last year is really work hard for the game to make sure that it works. But until then, you want to make sure that it will be a game sometime in the future.
Vital touched on this a little bit too, that the passion and the fun, make sure that it's a game for you. I've talked to some people and I'm like, oh, I want to make a game for that audience. If you're not the game's biggest fan, you're really not going to get
Yeah,
too far.
if you don't like
It has to be for you. You can't just pick out an
Just
audience
give
and
it-
go, I'm going to do that.
Certainly not as a, as an amateur or a new designer. Meaning once if this is your full-time job for a decade and whatever, maybe you learn the skills to design for a different audience. Maybe they build that up over time. But certainly when you're starting out and probably well into the best thing to do is to make a game that you like to make, because you're going to be playing it a bunch, you're going to be thinking about it a bunch. If you can do it.
You gotta support it, you gotta, you play it all the playtesting times, and if it's actually a success, what you're hoping for, you're gonna be playing it, promoting it.
The C game, if the game is released and you still play the game, so you did a good job.
Yeah, good job. Exactly.
I still play my game.
You're your biggest, their biggest fan, right?
Sorry?
You're their biggest fan, right?
Well, I really like my games, so otherwise I would not take my time doing them. I have a lot of projects that I didn't finish because I didn't like them. So.
Yeah, it's tough to work on something with you who's interested in it, for sure.
Yeah.
And even if you push through to the finish line, which is very rare, the lack of passion and belief in the game is going to push you up in the pitch.
Sure.
The publisher can see that big time.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think just to refine that question a little bit, so do you set aside specific times for like, okay, this is my game design time, or do you just kind of work whenever the inspiration strikes for a game?
Both.
Well, it might depend too, like, what if some of the work in game design is thinking about stuff, and you do that all the time. You're doing that in the shower, doing that in the car, doing that while you're supposed to be doing work, whatever. That's one thing. It's a little bit something else to like sit down and work on a prototype. You actually have to like do it, and maybe you have to schedule that. I don't necessarily schedule it. I know some people do. They're like, okay, I'm gonna work on a prototype, work on from like 8 to 10 in the morning or whatever. For me, it's more like when I can get a moment, or when I have to. I especially like after a playtest session where I'll go home and I'll like, I don't know, write down the notes or something of what came up and what I want to change. And I like to write it down so I don't forget about it, because it might be weeks or months or even years before I do anything with it. And sometimes when you're in the moment and you're thinking about it right then, sometimes it's a really good time to be like, all right, I'm just going to update my prototype right now. But sometimes it takes a while.
That's back to the passion thing, right? You have the passion right then.
Yeah.
You're excited about those changes, do it now.
I was gonna plug, I don't even know if it's still on Kickstarter, but I'm sure you can track it down, but there's a journal called Fail Faster, and anyone that's in this panel, you should probably just pick one up, because A, you're supporting these kind of things, and then B, it's a really cool tool. Over the years, Jay Cormier, the author of it, has been developing what kind of questions and what kind of things should you write down, and maybe during a session, maybe after. My rule of thumb, and I don't push this on other people, but I actually never write anything down during the session. I always wait till the next day, because if it's not, for me, if it's not memorable enough the next day, then I wait to see if that trends. But if I feel passionate about it the next day, then I write it down and I implement the changes. If I forget about it and it pops up again, then all of a sudden I'll notice that trend as well. So I think that's the thing. And the inspiration moments they're mentioning, like, for example, like my wife cracks up at whenever I say, oh, I have an idea, like that's like that lightning moment. She puts up with like hearing me talk it out. But those are so random, like that's not doing the work, that's just kind of like the fun, random ideas. But like for myself, I have to designate time, not only for like grinding out, like making the prototype, but then being very specific about scheduling playtesting. I think playtesting, you have to build rhythms in place and develop playtesters where they get better at it too, where you're encouraging and supporting them and giving them the tools to communicate what you need to hear. And so you learn how to listen to people, and you also encourage them how to communicate what you need to hear.
I think what he's saying there is just, that is the part or the role of the designer, that is to receive information from all the playtesters and filter the best one for the game. If you filter the best one, you have a good game. If you don't, you are not being a good designer, I think. But most of the time, 90% of the time is really work. You are on the computer, designing a layout, you are writing the rules, after one day of playtesting, you are updating the rules, making the changes, preparing everything for the next playtesting. So most of the time, they are just work. And many times after the playtestings, you found problems. You many times went against the wall, but it's the moments of what you are talking about, I think, that are the ones that when you find the solution for that problem. And those are really rewarding, and you know that you are on the good path to the board game. And that's one of the things that I really like on the board games. When I wake up and I see, oh, I have the solution for that problem yesterday. I think this may work. Let's play test again. And normally they don't.
Yes, that brings up a good point. Playtesting. So for a long time, I didn't have a regular playtest group. I was very jealous of those who did. I would just get my friends to playtest whenever they would come over, if they would do it, or I'd sometimes bring a prototype to a game night and just see if anyone was interested in playing it. But I didn't want to be that guy that was always forcing my prototypes on people, so that was tough and tricky. But more recently, a year ago or so, I finally kind of got organized like weekly, more than that, more longer than a year. I started getting like a regular playtest group to come, and it was so much better. It makes so much more progress when you have regular playtesting that there's no substitute for that. And last summer, I had a baby and had to sort of put my playtesting on hold for what turned out to be a really long time. And it just felt like a whole lot of nothing was happening. And more recently, I've started that up again, and it's just like so refreshing to be able to get the game to the table and playtest it. Because at some point you don't make any progress. You can have as many ideas as you want, but at some point it's not going to help you until you try it. And once you playtest it, then you know, okay, that worked, that didn't work, this is what needs fixing now, or whatever. So we really need that regular injection of testing to sort of guide the design.
I totally agree with you, Seth, about having a regular group of playtesting is very good because you know people you can receive more true feedback. Okay, you can trust the people, but at the same time you must be careful with that because the same people playing the same board game will try to reach all the time to the same problems. The group thinking that we already know that, so you have to disperse the people who to play testing. The more people you have, better. I'm using a system now that is Tabletopia online, where I have a group and I have more than 400 people trying to, liking to playtest games, and so this allows me, and I'm happy for it, to playtest with many different people almost every day. And then I can back to my group and I see how the things turn out, because of course you have to keep playtesting live. You cannot playtest online because it's very different. But at least you have many people saying different things, finding different problems, because everybody starts playing in a different ways, right? So
I have a story to illustrate that point. So there's a game that hopefully Maple's going to be doing, designed by Jay and Sen. And the funny part is it's a hidden movement game with a whole bunch of rules layered on. It's called Mind Management, and they had play tested it with their same group over and over and over again. And they took it then to a con that they went to, and they actually played it with a bunch of designers. And the designers were like, "Whoa, this is way too heavy. This is way too complicated. Like, how do your playtesters play this?" Well, it was because they played so many times, they got used to every rule that got layered in, that there was no on-ramp, and they were just like slammed with this intense game. And out of it, they actually, instead of stripping the rules out and just throwing them away, they've actually now developed, like there's a legacy element to it. So you unlock certain things and those things get weaved into the game, because the game actually is like it's a wonderful solution that gives the game length of replayability, kept all those great things, but like on-ramp, like people could learn things as they go. So that's an example of the total blind spot of the same group playing the same thing over and over again. That was it.
So, how did you guys start out, like on your own independent like publication, and then you moved on to bigger publications later, or how did that all work out for you guys?
Sure. So for me, it was, and I suspect this is not a common way to go, but so I started out just as a hobby, like thought it was fun tinkering with games, and at one point I thought about maybe I should pitch, but I didn't really know how, or it wasn't really like this is probably 13 years ago, I don't really know what to do. I actually did talk to like 1 or 2 publishers, never had any luck. But then my friend started a company to publish games. And so that was like my in, I guess. I kind of helped him out, and he started by publishing one of my games. And I've been working with him the whole time. So I kind of cheated the system as far as pitching is concerned. Not a lot of people have access to a buddy who just started a company. So, right. So in some respects, I feel like I missed out or cheated. I didn't get the full pitching process. But now I'm taking pitches from designers because I don't pick games to publish. So it's kind of funny to be on the other end of it without having fully gone through the first process. So that was my sort of backstory.
Well, Seth's right that not everybody has a buddy that started a company. You can't have a buddy that has a buddy that started a company. I started a game design group, and Seth was in attendance, and he played my game lots, and eventually said, hey, you should pitch it to my friend who's doing a company.
Yeah, I think when I first played Dave's first game, which was called Ground Floor, there was no such thing as tasting mystery games. I just thought it was cool, and I liked thinking about it. Then my friend started the company, and like I thought it was so cool that I thought we should publish it. And so he sort of piggybacked on the back. But since then, Dave's done a lot of pitching. We've got a lot of games signed with a lot of different publishers, the normal way.
The normal way.
Yeah, so mine, ironically, is even a little connected to you. I don't even know if you know this. Yeah, so you're not. So you'll hear a different version.
For now.
No, not a friend of a friend of a friend. No, but I actually was into games more for like organizing. I did a lot of organized play stuff, and one of the things we emphasize, I'm from Canada, is we would try to do one round in our tournament of Canadian design games, just to look into that, and we discovered a few designers and put their games in these organized play tournaments. And I fell in love with a game called Belfort, which was published by Tasty Minstrel. And when I looked into it, I found out that one of the designers lived like 15 minutes from my house. So I was like, oh, that's weird and cool. So I just actually got a hold of him and said, like, can we play games together sometime? And we did. And after a while, I started playtesting games for him. And he would always be like, oh, you should design. And I was like, nah. And then, but I loved, like, for example, for Belfort, like, they were starting to work on an expansion. So I loved the testing process for that. And it was really fun to be involved. And then the tipping point for me was actually, I wish I knew this guy to this day, but he came over to pitch a game idea and ask questions. So this guy sent one of the designers of Belfort, and he came with a spreadsheet book of like just page after page of spreadsheets. And we're like, yeah, but where's the game? Like, let's play it. He was like, no, I'm still working on it, still getting it all right in my head. And when he left, I was like, well, I can do a better job than that guy. And that was it. So I tried to make a prototype from there, so you never know what way.
Did the guy ever finish his game?
I've never heard.
You've never seen that game?
No.
Just scared.
I think it might be more common than we think for the impetus for somebody to become a game designer is, I think I can do better than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Okay.
it's not because you're doing game variants, right? You're playing one of your games.
House rules.
Yeah, house rules. That's how it usually starts. So take a break.
So what's it,
A little bit different because I don't knew anybody.
Right.
Portugal is a small country, so
Sure.
when I started playing games, we probably were 20 or 30 playing games in Portugal. So
apparently my influence reaches to Canada, but not all the way to Portugal.
No.
So close.
well, now we have about 500 gamers in Portugal, so it's not bad. So.
You're welcome.
I just want to play. I have a regular group of gamers. We play games, and I just want to try to place Portugal on the map. And I designed a map for my game called Vinhos, the map of Portugal. I have some knowledge about that. My uncle is an enologist, so I get some information from him. And then I just write the rules, I playtest the game a few times, and I start to sending a bunch of emails to all the publishers I knew. And, well, at least interested in heavy games. And I had the lucky of one of them just respond and say, send me the prototype, I will test it, and he immediately said, I will publish your game. So it was, what's your game in the time? And I published Vinhos, we changed, it took us about 1 year, probably 2 years for the game to be published. and seems like the game has some success. And from that, then I was designing another one. I decided, okay, I can be good at this, maybe, and I designed CO2. I pitched the game to a publisher during Essen because it was during the release of Venus. And I just sent some emails to some publishers saying that I have a new game, are you interested in seeing it? And Geokix pick it up Venus, CO2. I just remember one story that I sent a prototype of CO2 to Z-Man. It took me about 2 years to have an answer. So, not 2 years, but about 1.5 years probably to have an answer, and just say, your cars have problems, so I will want to get it again. So, then I did that. I went to Essen Fair. I booked some pitches with some publishers, and Geokix keep the game. After that, the doors started to open, and it was much easier to pitch the next games to other players. I just showed my game to Bonocor from Stronghold. He immediately wants to publish it. And then I discovered Eagle Griffin Games that says that wants all my games until I'm dead, so I'm okay.
So, something that Vital just said and alluded to earlier that might be a bit of a secret, that is say, people don't necessarily know how long it takes for a game to go from inception to publication. Like, it can be a really long time. And sometimes it's a long time because, as you said, you put it on the shelf for 2 years at a time and let it sit because you've got other things or because you were interested in it or you forgot about it or whatever. Other times it just takes a long time because you submit it to a publisher and they don't have a chance to look at it for a year. That happens.
And then he wants to change it, he wants to remake it, and
these things take a really long time.
And then you have to hire the art, you have to print the game must be delivered. It's a long time, yeah, for releasing a game. I can say to you, I start my most recent game it was released, Escape Plan. It was released right now. I think everyone is getting the game someday, some of these days. I have my idea in 2010. So, and I have the idea, but then the game was ready. I sent it to the publisher, and it took about 2 years probably to release the game, and then 1 year on production, a few more months to deliver the game, to reach your houses. So when I did the Kickstarter last year, I think May last year, the game was ready for some time already. Usually what takes more time is the rulebook. You always want to check the rulebook 1,000 times, and even though there are always problems with it. So it takes a long time to publish a game.
We have 5 minutes left or so. Anybody has the last question?
When you've got a game idea, or you start out, do you worry about, this will sell or this won't sell? Or do you just trust the market that if you produce a quality game, it'll take care of itself kind of thing? Do you worry about that at all?
You never know, publishers never know.
Yeah.
You may have a name that sells, you may have a target determined, the publisher have a name, but you never know.
My pushback would be like, maybe leave more of that to the publisher. Like, it's great to see what people are excited about, and it's great to consider, the market, but every rule is meant to be broken. This guy makes boxes the size of my coffin, and I make little games most of the time, so what's the rule? There's no rules.
Yeah. Perhaps more importantly, I feel like if you're a designer and your inspiration is, what do I think will sell, I don't know that you're going to get anywhere with your design. You could, and certainly people who are full-time designers and have to publish games to make a living, got to figure out what's going to sell. But I think especially for most people who are amateur designers or beginning designers or hobbyist designers, concentrating on what we think will sell, I would say it's probably not the thing to concentrate on. Pick something that's interesting to you and fun for you and work on that. And if you like it, there's probably other gamers like you that will like it. And if you get to the point where you think, okay, this is really good, this is as good as anything on the shelf, then you look for a publisher who's like-minded. If you're doing it the other way, if you're like, let's see, zombies are popular, you're probably a year behind the thing, because by the time your game comes out, zombies won't be popular anymore. So number one, there's a lag time in that. And number two, like I said, I don't think you won't have the passion for it. If your passion is, I want to sell a game, your game is going to not be that good. So I would recommend against it.
All right, I have a good last question. What's your favorite hobby outside of gaming?
What do you
Oh, I have a lot. I have a lot of interest. I go to concerts. I love music. I love movies. I do some running that I also love. I like radical sports. I still snowboard and kite surfing. So I have a lot of things. But as we said in the beginning, you are always thinking in game design. I can be sailing on the sea with my kite surfer, and I'm thinking what I'm going to solve today, or something like that. Of course, you have moments that you don't think about game design, but I think all of those interests are outside of the game design. It's what drives you to make the games, right? I would like to make maybe not. Radical sports game? No, probably not. But
Don't do it.
no,
I want it.
I don't think it's really sports.
Sports games, they don't
Yeah, don't trust. Yes.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but
Did one yet.
music, yes, you can do.
There's not some.
Yeah, music, movies. My last game is about movies, basically escape plan. So.
I'm a movieaholic. I love photography. I love cooking. I'm obsessive about baseball. So maybe.
For me, it's basketball, tennis, photography.
For me, it's ultimate frisbee. And like everyone else, I like to watch TV and movies and stuff. And play games. Like I also just play. We're not designing a game. I like playing other games. I just don't get a chance to very often anymore. And then doing these things that are other hobbies, even when you think you're getting a break from game design, you're doing another thing. All of a sudden, you're thinking, hey. I think I've just thought of a way I can make Ultimate into a board game.
Right.
That's fun.
Oh,
I like that part. I like that part.
Thank you.